Welcome to the 2025 Monster Energy AMA Supercross preview on Vital MX. The time has come to look ahead to what the 2025 season has in store, and all signs are positive. Will Jett Lawrence continue his reign? Will Sexton be much improved on the KTM? Will Eli Tomac be much improved on the Yamaha? Will Cooper Webb be just as effective? All of these questions and more will be tackled on this episode of what is technically the Vital MX post-race show, but it is very much a Vital MX pre-race show for this 1 week only. And in fact, because this is a Vital MX post-race show format, we are brought to you by Decal Works, Fox Racing, and new for 2025, Yoshimura. Or Yoshimura, if you come from my part of the world. It's a lot to handle. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips, if you're unfamiliar, joined by Michael Lindsay. Hello.
Of course, we found a new sponsor that you can go back and forth with the name as much as Beta.
Yes, it's very difficult for me because Yoshimura sounds so natural and Yoshimura sounds like some sort of disease.
Now, if I could just get Kawasaki to be a sponsor, I could hear you every week say Kawasaki.
I think Kawasaki, I suppose we say it the same, don't we? No?
Okay. No, okay. You always say it with a Z-ish sound more
Kawasaki.
Than an A. Yeah, there, Kawasaki instead of
Well,
Kawasaki.
you know, we don't discriminate here. And if you say stuff however you want, people, because we do not discriminate, and we are here for all of you, no matter where you're watching or listening from. Yes, watching too, because this week we are on YouTube as well as audio platforms. So if you're listening to this and you would rather watch it, jump across to YouTube and vice versa. So we are 13 days, 12 days, 10 days, 11 days, who knows, out from Anaheim 1. It's very close. And the first rider to tackle, but also perhaps the easiest rider to tackle, is Jett Lawrence. We know he's going to be good. The biggest question mark I have is, will the new Honda, which has proven to be somewhat troublesome in preseason races or off-season races, will that hold him back at all and open the door for his rivals? What says you?
I thought about this while we were doing notes for this. I do have it as more of a note for Hunter, but for some reason with Jett, just everything goes by the wayside. I do think so far it looked like the bike was clearly better for them in Pro Motocross. I think they had gotten their last year's Supercross platform so good with some unique, hard parts and items and the time and testing they had into it. I think they're just, at least what we saw early preseason, maybe just trying to find some of the consistency in the new bike. But between everything they've said, us riding the bike, even on media side, they'll figure it out. It's fine. And again, with Jett, I just have little to no worries. If there is any chink in the armor early in the season, all the people we're going to talk about after this need to take very clear advantage of it, though, because I don't know. I think anybody here can't not have faith that HRC, Jett, those guys, even if they don't have it dialed to A1, that they're not going to be good within a couple rounds.
Well, perhaps it's fabricated, perhaps it is a non-issue, but the fact that it is at least on the table, I would believe that is blood in the water for Chase, Eli, and Cooper. It is at least a potential vulnerability, and you can take that inch a mile.
Yeah, for them, even if it is a little bit fabricated at this level, you have to take that. You have to feed off that. You have to use it as some sort of motivation. Again, as I say, it's like come out swinging. If you let Jett have it early in the season, anything can happen. That's why we're going to go racing for 17 rounds. But if I was any of these guys and you let Jett, say, come out, sweep the opening 2 or 3 rounds, yeah, not a great feeling. Come out, strike while the iron's hot, if there is blood in the water, go for it.
I honestly mean this as a compliment, but I feel like it will perhaps come across as a diss. I seriously question whether Jett Lawrence can be better than last year, which is more of an indication of just how good he was last year at points. Obviously, some rounds worse than others, but when we saw him at his very best, Nashville springs to mind, I don't know if it's possible for him to go better than that. So perhaps that also leads me to feel confident about his competition, because I certainly believe that Chase, Eli, and Cooper can be better than they were last year. Whereas for Jett, I feel like there is less wiggle room and definitely more room to fall backwards than there is to go forwards.
Yeah, I think the only thing with Jett, like Dazzy always says, and I mean, yes, we've seen Jett make some mistakes, but he really isn't a rider that seems to make the same mistake twice. I agree with you. When it comes to outright ability and speed, I don't know if we'll see, compared to like a Daytona, some of the rounds much more dominant wins than what we saw out of him last year. But the one thing that could help him is maybe just a little more consistency across the season. And I think that's the easiest thing he could gather with experience. I don't see him just demoing this field. I think all these guys will come in a little bit better prepared. They'll have learned. But the dangerous part is Jett could just be straight up more consistent at this point.
And it's safe to say he is the logical title pick for myself and you as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, again, there's our guys that have shots, but I'll say one thing. Our coworker Jamie Guade recently did an article comparing rookie seasons to McGrath's, and me and him had this conversation afterwards. There's a lot of people that think McGrath's season was the greatest rookie Supercross season of all time, and I do think from a setting trend and changing the sport potentially, yes. But one of the most drastic things with Jett's title last year is look at the past champions he's beat. McGrath beat Stan. That was the only title holder, I believe, in his rookie season. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, between Tomac, Chase, Webb, all these guys, like it is, again, not a diss to Jett. It's hard to believe he could be that much better than last year because it'll probably be easier to appreciate a decade from now how good his rookie 450 Supercross season really was.
Perhaps this is more of an overarching theme with the four contenders, and I think we're agreed that Jett, Cooper, Eli, and Chase are far and away the four title contenders here. I believe that Anaheim 1 is more crucial than ever before because A, if Jett comes out and wins again, that immediately bursts whatever bubble his competitors have manifesting. On the flip side, if Jett comes out and struggles, which would be in stark contrast to last year, that immediately builds hope amongst the competition and they can then run with that momentum. I truly, truly believe that Anaheim 1 this year will set the tone more than ever before.
Yeah, again, if they let Jett come out and win, that's not good. I mean, that sounds as plain as day to say, but it is not good. Interesting compared to last year is just we'll see between weather, mud races, other things is if somebody can get the ball rolling early, they have to. This group that we're talking about is absolutely amazing. And it's hard to think that any of them could get a leg up on the other. But if one of them can make it happen the first couple rounds consistently and pull out a gap, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But as long as all these guys are healthy and firing on all cylinders, I think we're in for an amazing season of battles and podiums. And again, at least compared to years past, I think hopefully Webb has finally broken the cycle of people doubting him because, yeah, him, Chase, Eli and Jett have to be the favorites, and then we still have the outsides looking in, like Kenny and Jason, guys that'll pull out wins and be in this and potentially mix up points even more.
Before we jump to Webb, one final point on Jett. A slight weakness that we saw in Supercross last year was that when the tracks were particularly hard pack, both he and Hunter struggled out of the gate. Characteristics from the Honda, power curve, whatever it may be, that was a marked issue that even Jett admitted to. So perhaps on the 2025 Honda, that is a non-issue. Perhaps Jett is even more consistent out of the gate, and this is what makes him better. Maybe that's the area for him to make a significant step forward, because looking at his statistics from last year, yes, he was an amazing starter, started first in 5 main events, but he was either first, second, third, or 8th, 9th, 10th.
So years past, at least in the 450 program, the electronics on the bike have been limited. It is basically a full Japan EC, if you want to come up with a blunt term. It was an HRC one that had a very old software unit. I think I'd heard something like the software unit on it was like 20 years old. Linking some of that into some of the modern day launch controls and stuff, they were very limited on the changes they made. This is the first year that they're on full get, like they were on their 250 program, and I just know the amount of effort. They already know that their starts are good. They're going to put in every little bit of effort. Now they have a little more control in the electronics to be better on all surfaces and all conditions when it comes to starts. And I think it will be interesting to see if they do nail it this year even more, just how much that affects teams and other riders, how much they try to study and figure out how to replicate what they're doing.
Moving on to Cooper Webb, second in the championship last year, of course. Is he going to surprise everyone yet again? Or are we finally in a position where we expect Cooper Webb to be in the title fight and this is going to be just fine?
Well, I haven't watched any of our previous shows, but at least we're saying it. We're going with title contender right off the bat, because if you don't, you're just an idiot at this point. Webb continues to defy the odds year after year. Again, when you
But
look
even
at
that, defy the odds, that has negative connotations. What odds is he defying?
I think defied by the fact that everybody just looks at raw speed, looks at talent, multiple things, and just keeps thinking these guys are going to override him. They're going to pull away from him, and he continues to match them, peg for peg every year. He's had a little more career fluctuation maybe than some guys in terms of titles and then ups, downs a little bit. But he's there every single year. No matter, again, I say defy the odds because everybody feels like the odds are he would be out. The odds are public perception, not actual factual data of his racing.
I just published an article on Vital MX, which by the time that you listen or watch this will not have been just published. It would have been hours or days ago. And effectively, the mantra that I'm going with as we enter 2025 is we, as a sport community, whatever you may choose to adopt, we do Cooper Webb a disservice because we put so much emphasis on his crafty nature, his ability to get it done when the odds are against him. But actually, what we overlook is that Cooper Webb can be the fastest rider on track. We saw it in both of his title-winning seasons. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but countless wins. And even last year, 2 pole positions, which he has even cited in pre-season discussion as evidence that he has the raw pace to run with Jett, and he doesn't need to just be crafty and rely on circumstances. Yeah. That is I don't know how you would put it or frame it, but I think that is the unfair nature of how we pose Cooper Webb as a title threat.
I get that because, look, honestly, if we're talking about anybody that's pulling off a Supercross win, that means they have the speed to be a title contender in a small window if you look at their just pure raw speed. So it's never saying that Webb isn't as fast as these guys. I do think, it's very honest to say when you do go off his past results of pole positions up, yes, there are some of the contenders we talk about race are maybe have more raw speed on an average night than him. And the reason I think we continue to go towards his craftiness, it is his skill set. Like everybody has their, at this level especially, you're all fast. If you're a top 5 guy, if you're winning Supercross 450 mains, you are ridiculously fast. You're one of the best this sport will ever see. But Webb does have that craftiness and mostly that racecraft and that mental fortitude to fall back on, in a sense that some of his competitors don't have. Straight up, I do think Webb is potentially the mentally strongest. Actually, I'll ask you that, who you think the mentally strongest. I don't know if it's him or Jett, but like Webb is insanely mentally strong. He is insanely crafty. Even when he comes out with bad qualifying for the night, okay, heat races, he turns it on at the right time. And whether that's a skill set, whether it's natural ability for him, it's what he's worked on, whatever it is part of what makes him shine. And it's something that he has that's a little bit better than his competitors. Sometimes his competitors have a little maybe better raw speed or a little better technique, but that's where Cooper outshines them is his mental fortitude and his crafty, his racecraft.
For the first time, Cooper has referenced the fact that he knows he's not going to be a title contender forever. He knows he's getting on and he knows his window is closing. That's the first time I've heard him mention that. But what comes with that is a sense of game time as 2025 approaches. I really believe that he is looking to capitalize on this season because he believes that this could be his last chance. I'm sure it won't be. 2026 is only 12 mere months away, but it's perhaps a different mentality and maybe similar to Jett, who is really taking motivation from the hate that he gets online. I feel like Webb is taking motivation from the fact that my time is now and maybe not beyond this point.
I think I posed this question a couple times last year between me and you. If Webb ends up winning the 2025 title, because of the competition, because of the gap of kind of just, again, everybody doubting him, do you think it changes the long-term perception of his career if he makes it happen in 25? Does it elevate him to a different place in people's minds amongst the legends of the sport?
I mean, 2021 was a little while ago now. So recency bias prevalent in this sport. Adding another title closer to the end of his career would do well because that would just be easier to remember. But
I think but the people, the competition.
Yes. But again, is that I guess Chase Chase was there, but not there in the same degree he is now.
Yeah.
And obviously Jett wasn't.
Again, recency bias. If you look at his past titles, if he pulls off in 25, do you on paper, before seeing how the racing goes for the year, seeing the competitiveness of everybody, would you think for a Cooper Webb the 25 title would be the hardest earned, the most legendary on his resume? Just looking at it on paper before things get moving.
On paper, sure, but obviously if it happens, maybe everyone gets injured and he walks to it and wins it 4 rounds early, similar to Villapoto in 2012. But yeah, is Webb, in your opinion, is Webb Jett's greatest competitor?
I think so, because I think he's the hardest to crack of the group. I think he's the hardest to read and understand night to night. I don't feel like what was it you would call it, like if you're on a bad streak or anything. I just don't think Webb is as easily affected by a streak of bad races, a streak of good races, anything. He's a gamer. It comes when it's game time. I think he's the hardest to read in the group. So yes, in a sense, he could be the most unknown competitor, could be the hardest fought. Raw pace is interesting. Then you get into a Tomac Sexton conversation. But yeah, I could argue that in a way, Webb has got to be the one you're the most worried about because you just don't know what you're going to get.
And moving on to Chase Sexton, who is, of course, backed by Decal Works, who also back us furiously here at Vital MX, and we are very grateful for all they do, as you should be as well. The amount of customizable options that they offer at decalmx.com is unprecedented, and it would be remiss of you to not take advantage of those at your earliest convenience. New season, why not look a little bit better? Chase Sexton is perhaps the most exciting, fascinating, interesting story of 2025 because we know just how good he can be. The 2023 season, the raw pace was unbelievable. Pole positions, even in race situations, the way that he sprinted away from Tomac and Webb on occasion was phenomenal. We didn't see that so much in 2024. So the question is, of course, can he rediscover that on the KTM, which got off to a turbulent start in 2024 Supercross, or is 2024 the new norm for Chase Sexton? I believe the former, but what says you?
Sexton's storyline for this year to me is the most interesting of pretty much anybody we're talking about, particularly with, Jett's going to be at Honda probably for his whole freaking career at the rate we're going, with Tomac and Webb nearing the end of Yamaha, and then Chase with his situation at KTM. There's a storyline of, is he going to be the consistent Chase from last year? Is he going to be the raw pace Chase from the year before? Can he figure out how to mold and meld the two together? He does potentially on paper have maybe the most margin for gain of any of these guys we're talking about. I feel like Chase honestly has the potential to elevate potentially the most out of the group compared to what we saw last year. But then there's the side conversation of what's going on with KTM on the racing side financially. There's also just his personal contract situation. I think the earliest part of, somebody of his level makes decisions a long ways out. He's, the first to fall in the game of chess before the pawns and all the other contracts get done. So the first, 6 to 10 rounds of Supercross could be a very telltale sign of also where Chase's career goes from here. Again, everybody else we're talking about in this conversation is going to be staying put through the end of their career for a very long time. So there's multiple reasons. And it's going to be very fascinating to watch Chase's year play out because it's more than just the on-track any given night result. So I will say, on one other hand, I feel like there's a lot more weighing on him maybe than some of the other guys.
Silly season aside, though, Chase, we all reference Jett as the new era. Webb has mentioned that the technique that Jett has reintroduced to the sport is something that both he, Eli, and Kenny have to kind of readapt to follow suit. But Chase is right there next to Jett in the new era of rider. It just so happens that Jett is newer, which leads you to think that Chase is maybe a part of the old guard. But Chase is still very much in a development phase, I would say, where he can, again, make those massive gains. From what I know, as you would expect, this offseason has been much more settled on the KTM. He's been able to just do motos, which really didn't happen at all last year as he was trying to overcome issues. So that in itself should lead to confidence, which should translate to on-track performance and therefore results. The only question I have, and the proof will be in the pudding come race time, is whether his starts have improved, because that really was his Achilles heel last year. If his starts have improved and he is now starting alongside Jett, honestly, I think he can go toe-to-toe to Jett on the right night. And I don't know if I would say the same about the other competitors.
Yeah, if the cards align, like kind of what we talked about before, is depends what chase we see in terms of raw speed. I do think raw speed can go toe-to-toe with Jett every single night. But does he find that level of comfort on the KTM to push the limits like he did at the end of his Honda tenure again? That is what I want to see. I know it's there in Chase. I have no doubt about it. And that's why I bring up the potential, like, does he go elsewhere eventually? Because he knows what he's capable of. He knows that he's of Jett's era. He knows what he's capable of on a motorcycle. I think there's less question marks for him than an Eli or Coop, who, again, they see the end of the career coming. You know, if Father Time surpasses them and their speed drops off, it's something that it's going to be hard to accept, but they can. If you're in Chase's case and you straight up see Jett pull away from you in races, he knows I should be there. So that's Chase again is in a very different place mentally than the other two we have in the conversation up against Jett.
Massively overlooked is the fact that last year after round 13, Chase was only 15 points down. I do believe, maybe rightfully so, we will look at his 2024 Supercross season as an absolute disaster. But despite that, he wasn't a million miles away. He was somewhat in the picture for the championship until that Nashville crash. So,
well, go ahead.
That would hint that the gains that he has to make are not, in fact, as substantial as they may seem. Although there is scope to make this enormous step forward, even 0.5% of that would serve him well.
I'm really curious to see, just in general, the beginning of this season, because you look at some of the guys that ran last year, like Chase did have a rougher beginning to the season, but one little bit saving grace in terms of championship points was how chaotic the opening rounds were in terms of rider results. And that's something I still mentioned at the top of this is it still going to be like that, the opening 6-8 races this year? Is it going to be back and forth between these winners? Are we going to see 5 season winners in the first 7-8 races? Or, are we just going to see 2 or 3 of these guys stand out? Are we going to see somebody amongst the first 8 races win 4 times? I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
We know how much Chase rides the wave of confidence. So, again, as I said previously, I feel like Anaheim 1 and starting on the right foot will be key, because that will avoid going down a rabbit hole with the bike and overthinking the situation. If he can feel like himself to begin with, and again, I don't necessarily believe that's a result. I think that's just an on-track feeling. If he has that, I think the sigh of relief that will come out of him will be so extreme that will be the key that unlocks this potential moving forward. It's just how quickly we get to that point. But certainly, as we said, there is so much room for him to grow on the KTM. And again, you would presume the safe bet would be that there would be improvements in year 2. It would almost be against the grain if he's still struggling as much as year 1. So perhaps he surprises everyone, and even that is a disservice because it will surprise everyone. But, terrible way to put it, but he was the Jett Lawrence of the 2023 season. He was the reference point for, wow, look at that style, look at that speed. It's just a fact that we move so quickly that we forget that. But he was that guy, and he can be again. Speaking of can be again, is Eli Tomac poised to unlock the 2022 form, the 2023 form, or was 2024 a sign of the new norm? I, again, believe that this very much comes down to starts. I think that, and I tweeted this to some aggressive responses from fans, which
I enjoyed it.
Is a new trend with Eli Tomac, I do believe, because he's now entered his stage of beloved veteran. So his fan base is perhaps more passionate than ever before. Happens with everyone. But I believe that the scoop tyre or the off-road tyre or some variation of the scoop, whatever path he goes down, I believe that that is his emotional support tyre. I believe that just seeing that on the bike gives him more confidence in his starts, which then translates. I almost have no question that when he can use that tyre, he will be competitive because he will start at the front, and that's half the battle. I don't know how it goes when he can't use that. That would be my biggest question mark. And that would lead me to believe that perhaps, not certainly, but perhaps, potentially, there will be some fluctuation in his results, which would render him irrelevant in the championship fight. Do I believe that he will be out and out better than last year? Yes. Do I believe that he will be faster? Yes. Do I believe that he will win more races? Yes. All of that, I believe, isn't up for debate. At the end of the day, he only won one race last year. So winning two is quite obtainable for a rider like Eli Tomac. I just wonder if he's that consistent 7 or 8 time winner across the season.
It's a different sampling, but seeing, of course, we saw throughout Supercross last year, we question his form. And then finally, right at the end of the season, we saw some glimpses, per se, of the Eli that we had seen before. And then, it's a little different to base it off of, but the WSX performances were pretty dang cool to watch. How handily he basically performed against Kenny, how aggressive he looked. Starts, yes, it is a weaker field in a sense, but me and you have talked about this a lot, particularly in SMX last year with him getting away, being able to run the scoop. You're not going to learn how to run it at every freaking Supercross. That's not possible. I only have a handful on my head that I think it's really actually doable at. However, go ahead.
Crucially, from what I know, he has been pushing the limits of what that tyre can do and where it's suitable. He is very much trying to make this work.
Yeah. Well, like I said, there's two options. You have the full scoop, and then the AT, I think it's 82. AT82 is a reverse flyer and has kind of a scoopish pattern in the center. If you can figure out, we talked about this last year, when everybody, there's talk I know going on in the sport with teams about tires, and I'm actually wearing a Dunlop hat right now, but I've heard people comment like, look, we do all this testing, we work on technique, the guys work on suspension, engine, all this stuff, the chassis, and at the end of the day, everybody is connected to the surface by the same product. Dunlop has done an amazing job in that sense to where every team chooses them with no financial support, just picks the best product. They do have a range. Now, if you can figure out how to take a product, I've heard teams say this, they're like, look, we don't think we're going to find something better. We're just trying to figure out, is there a tire compound, a size, something we can do to find an advantage somewhere and then try to make up for where it's going to be worse elsewhere. Because right now, if you just keep going into the race with the exact same product as your entire lineup, it definitely, kind of creates one less thing you can do to try to get the upper hand. Like we talked about though in the SMX, like if they can figure it out, if he can figure out if he's the guy that wants to take the leap and figure out how to do it, the toughest thing we talked about at the beginning, even though we were talking about, Jett's hard pack starts, Jett was still outright an amazing starter across last year. And it's very, very hard, whether we're talking about Chase unlocking more speed, where we're talking about Eli at his best, where we're talking about Webb, to beat Jett when he gets you on the whole shot is asking a lot at this point. I think that's a very fair statement that it would be hard for any of these guys to beat Jett when Jett gets the whole shot. So if you're somebody like Eli, like figure out how to outstart Jett and at least give yourself an advantage, even if the tire goes away, even if the surface goes away, if it allows you to sprint for a couple laps, do something different with the bike setup, you have to take the advantage. You have to take the opportunity to try to find an advantage against Jett.
Allow me to paint a very, very clear picture. Tomac has started 179 450 main events. He has started first 20 times. So the starts being a weakness is not new. This is very much a pattern throughout his career. We know that. What I wonder is, as you mentioned, is going to a scoop type tyre. Is that because it's out and out a competitive advantage, or is it to offset a weakness that Tomac is very much aware of? if it was an out-and-out competitive advantage, you would think that all riders would be trying to use it. I think it's more of a case of I'm now accepting the fact that I am not the best starter in this field, so I need a little bit of a help. Maybe this is going to do that. That points to a weakness, that points to an insecurity that you can't have in this ridiculously deep 450SX field. And I wonder almost if his reliance on the tyre, potentially, could be a double-edged sword where Texas, for instance, SMX, he used it and later admitted it was the wrong way to go. Could his reliance on it lead him to use it thinking it's going to be the solution, then it's too hard pack, and he then has a throwaway result because bad decision, whereas everyone else is maintaining a consistent choice.
Again, though, the guys were talking about what if an off night for him on the tire is a 4th or a 5th? Like, it still might not be. Again, if he can figure out how to maximize it, and I think also part of it comes down to riding style. Of course, Eli is very heavy throttle-handed, very heavy on acceleration zones. There's certain things where it's like, okay, he can make the most out of a tire that has pure traction in a straight line. If he can continue to build off that. Yeah, there are going to be nights it's not going to be as good around the track as certain tires. He may still have to choose that going into main. There's going to be races where flat out it's not going to work. If we're going down this deeper rebel, it's like an option every night. There's going to be some rounds where he's going to have to be on a 34 spec. He's going to have to be on AT82. But if there's the nights where it's like 50-50, okay, this thing's going to be great off the start. It's going to be great for 5 laps and it's going to go away. I get your point of like, oh, in this sport, you can't have that emotional weakness or that mental weakness, I should say. But in the same breath, also sometimes the strength is admitting like, hey, I'm not good here and I'm going to work around it. I'm going to create, a good situation out of a shit situation. Also, you can applaud somebody for mentally going, okay, like this is what it is. I'm going to turn this into a strength if I can figure this out.
Tire aside, do you feel like Tomac in himself can get back to his form from 2023 or 2022, or do you believe those days are gone?
No, same conversation that we have with Webb, Jett, Chase, any of these guys. You don't win this much if you are not that level of guy, if you don't have that mentality, that strength. So, yeah, am I saying it's a given? No, it's going to be a challenge for him, but yeah, he can get there. Okay. If there's a doubt in it, the man should not line up.
Rewording the question, if he gets back to the form from 2022 and 2023, is that enough? Or has the level risen? For instance, talking to Webb, he mentioned that he believes that last year there were main events where he finished 3rd, and that 3rd place was far and away better than any win he had in his championship winning seasons. So is that, okay, Webb's championship winning seasons are a little further gone than Tomac's 2022 season, but does that same vibe ring true for Tomac?
That's hard. I've said this before on our podcast, and it maybe comes across as hard. Yes, do guys like Jett and Chase, have they elevated certain aspects of riding and technique and other stuff? Yes, but in the same breath, I don't think the sport has dramatically become that much gnarlier than a couple of years ago. Again, I can reference what certain guys are doing off the couch. Like, we're talking about top-end guys as versus mid-pack, but like just seeing guys that are late in the sport, like Billy Laninovich at 40 last year, I thought, no way in hell the dude make a main, and he easily made a couple of them. I'm just like, the sport has not moved, I think, as dramatically as the top guys in it want to think it has. I get it from their end that, there's a part of them that knows they're working hard every day to find a 0.1% gain, and they're finding it. But I don't think the sport has just dramatically moved forward by this massive margin. It's moved forward, but when you say, oh, is it good enough if Eli can get back to his 23 form? I think if he can get there mentally, and I think he'll need another little trick up his sleeve or a little gain here or there to ultimately be a title contender. But I also think if he's back to 23 form, he's very much in the conversation. We haven't moved dramatically past 23 already.
This is a very, very, very difficult question. So I feel sorry for you having to answer it. If you were forced to drop one of these 4 riders from the list of contenders, who's going first? I struggle with this because honestly,
Are you going to answer? Are you going to answer it after me?
Perhaps this is me buying into preseason hype and being excited about what lies ahead. But right now, I look at these 4 riders as 25% each. I honestly feel like there isn't much in it between all 4 of them. We talk about the weaknesses of Tomac and Chase and the new bike for Jett, but despite all of that, I'm really right there where I'm like pretty much 25% for everyone, which is exciting. Like that's genuinely an exciting place to be and makes this question incredibly hard.
I'm gonna go back. I mean, I'm going. It's funny because it's right off of like I'm very behind Eli's growth, but if I had to drop one, and I'm going off circumstances of just him having some injuries the last couple of years, and it's going to be his final go, and I could see swinging to the fences to make it happen. I'll say Eli because I do have a feeling he could be like the most potentially injury of the group. It is his final full season. Let's swing for the fences. So I could see something happening with Eli. So Eli would be, if you had to challenge me to remove one from the conversation, I'm going to go against the guy I was just backing for so many reasons.
I would go the same simply because recency bias. There's more evidence against Tomac more recently than there is Webb, than there is Chase. Obviously, neither of us are dropping Jett from this top 4 group. That would have been an extremely bold move.
To back up one that you mentioned, though, that's kind of interesting is part of Webb's track record is a great season followed by a decent, it's hard to say a bad season. If he truly feels like some of the races he was, getting third in last year his winning capability was better than his winning years, could you also fall back and say maybe this is going to be the not as optimal year for Webb? Again, I hate to use the words not good because at this point it's still insane what these guys do.
No, because he also said in the same breath that he believes that he is out and out a better and unrecognizable rider compared to his championship winning years. He really believes that and this is his opinion, so it's not exactly gospel, but he believes the sport, Supercross specifically, has moved on so much at the top level that for him to be competitive in the current field, he would smoke championship winning Webb. So, make of that what you will. I asked this question on the Vital MX Instagram earlier this week because I genuinely struggled to recall this. We all, again, the big 4, we're all very well aware. I was sat here going, who was 5th in the championship last year? AP was great. No, he got injured towards the end. Hunter, we're all high on Hunter. No, because he missed a couple of races. So I'm going from Roczen. I'm like, no, I'm just really like struggling. So eventually I look it up and I'm, of course, Jason Anderson. Of course it was. But it was so hard for me to recall because, to put it bluntly, he was very much under the radar and just quietly going about his business last year. But nonetheless, I genuinely feel a sense of excitement about what Anderson will bring to the 2025 season. Second year on the bike. He wants to stay with Kawasaki beyond 2025, and to do that, quite openly, he said, I need to prove what I can do. That motivation, I think, serves Anderson well. I think he is a rider that needs that. I believe that he is sick of being irrelevant, for lack of a better term, as he has been for the most part the last 2 years. Now, I say this as the West Coast swing approaches. Perhaps I'm less high on this as we move east, but I believe that Anderson comes out and surprises everyone immediately in the first 4 rounds. So for that reason, I'm high on Anderson, but do I believe that that leads him to be regularly infiltrating the top 4? No. But I do believe he's better than last year.
While we're on the subject, because again, when we have a conversation like this with Jason, like clearly he knows, probably to continue his future, how he needs to at least put it on, needs to get close to putting it on the top step of the podium or getting back there, which I believe you mentioned in a tweet or Instagram. How many days has it been since his last win? Didn't you have as a stat or something? Or
it was like 900, and it was in the 900s.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, but it was in the 900s. It was the final round of 2022, so 2 years and a half. It's been a while. But it would be remiss of us to not acknowledge Anaheim 2 of 2024, where he won one of the Triple Crown main events and was generally incredible. So although he hasn't won a traditional main event in some time, there have been these flashes of brilliance.
So I feel like he's the opportunity to bring up this conversation. I mean, we still have one or two people after this that also can fall in this category, but the age-old, how many guys will win per year? I think what our average is around 5. The 4 we named before this were pretty much, if they're championship contenders, we're saying those 4 winning main events. How many do you actually think we get this year? If you're saying like, hey, you feel the Jason hype. Is he one of them? Where do we top out on this if we actually have to put it to paper?
Heart says yes. Head says my head says 4 is the safe bet, and Jett, Cooper, Chase, and Eli are going to be so incredible that it will be near impossible for someone to sneak one in there. But
impossible for Kenny even.
I think he's only got 1 the last 2 years, so like that 1 can quite easily not happen. I think they make it incredibly tough. I really do, because again, overarching theme of mine heading into 2025. We know how good Jett is. We know how good Cooper is. Chase will be much better than last year. Eli will be much better than last year. And even with Chase and Eli admittedly off their game last year, Roczen snuck 1 win in, and that was it. And AP, of course. And maybe one other, now that I think about it. But still, point being, the door theoretically was much more open last year than it would be this year. In my mind, if this plays out as I'm kind of processing.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not as high on Anderson as me.
I mean, I do get the point. Like, I think he'll be better than last year. Yes, second year on the bike. He has a point to prove again. It is. I think it's something I was going to mention at the top of the show I forgot about is whether we're having this conversation about Anderson, Malcolm Stewart, Eli Tomac, any of them. It's always very personally prevalent to me because I'm basically the same age as these guys. I grew up 50s and 60s, same age group. So it's like the 32 going to 33 for most of these guys. Like, it's insane that, if you take away Justin Brain's Daytona win from a few years back, everybody we'd be talking about in this list of potential wins would be, I believe, setting basically age records almost for wins. So yeah, Anderson being here, trying to basically continue the career at one of the highest level teams. Yeah, he's going to perform better than he did last year. He has all the reasons, all the pressure, all the self-motivation to make it happen. Somewhere he said, however, those top 4 are just so good. So when I say Anderson's going to perform better, I agree. I believe so. But I think that's limited to podiums. He can win. Of course he can. Am I putting a bet on it? Am I putting him on the list?
My personal New Year's resolution is to talk about Justin Cooper more. No one talks about Justin Cooper, but he should be...
We talked about him last year. Every round we would say, nobody talks about this guy.
He should. It's honestly hard to come up with a narrative, come up with storylines, but you can't talk about Anderson, Hunter, Roczen without including J-Coop in that group. Is he going to win? Probably not, but he should be... Let's say this. I believe that 2025 is make or break for Justin Cooper. He's had his rookie year. It's now time to show what you can do. Of course, he even had those 450 wildcard appearances in 2023 when he moonlighted a little bit. So I look to this year as for Justin Cooper to make his claim, prove to Yamaha why he deserves to be the successor to Eli Tomac, why he deserves a multi-year deal. I think this is very much make or break for Justin Cooper. If he succeeds, he soars, multi-year contract at Yamaha, really cements his position. If he fails, I could see him losing that Yamaha ride. Let's be honest, Hayden Deegan is coming. Perhaps Justin Cooper gets another 1-year deal, but very much it feels like he could be keeping a seat warm. Of course, that's presuming Yamaha want to go back to 2 spikes rather than 3, which does seem to be the case. And on the opposite side of the coin, if he doesn't soar, if he maintains his current level or even declines, I could see him slipping to a program like HEP and moving to Suzuki, and then that's where he kind of has to stay. What says you?
Kind of similar. I mean, it's interesting that not that there's a huge age difference between them, but him and Plessinger, like you could be Jay Coop, you could be looking at Aaron's situation of like, hey, he's a Red Bull KTM, but he just keeps ending up on these 1 year extensions. He kind of, not to say KTM doesn't believe in Aaron, but he feels like somewhat of a seat warmer, like he's a placeholder at times. Like he's good, he's great for the team, but you don't feel that long-term commitment. They're waiting for the next best thing. Can Justin Cooper break that mold? Because yeah, he could very easily just do well enough this year to stay at Star in another 1 year contract because they've got Webb through with option through 26, I believe, and he was working on potential extension. You have Tomac, who's in his final full season, but has the opportunity to probably do a Supercross only after that. And then, just thinking Hayden, okay, does Hayden copy Jett and in 26 do 250 indoor, 450 outdoor? If you're Jay Coop, do you break the mold? Do you get away from what Plessinger has been in? I agree with you. I feel like it is very make or break. If he doesn't make a big enough splash for Yamaha to commit to him long-term this year, I don't think they ever do. Not to say that means he could leave or he just gets stuck in 1 year cycles. Like it just, that commitment to him never comes through. He is interesting because it's like the light is there at the end of the tunnel. Again, when I talk about the age thing, when you talk about the Andersons, the Tomac, so many guys that Malcolm Stewart, they're about to age out. So Jay Coop, even if he doesn't solidify himself enough for Star, there is the opportunity to solidify yourself enough to become somebody's future, to become Kawasaki's future, to become, one of the Rockstar guys or Husqvarna's futures with Malcolm and Barcia both being at the end of their contracts. All these guys we're talking about want to stay, but can Justin take over their place and be the long-term commitment for somebody? I don't think, again, that conversation is limited to just Star, but you are right. I feel like it is make or break between him being just a 1 year guy or slipping back a level of program or getting somebody to commit to him long term. And we said this last year, if he continues at the rate of development he is, I think he could be a huge pickup for somebody next year if Star doesn't pull the trigger on him. Again, Kawasaki, like Anderson wants to stay. I mean, Jay Coop could be an excellent pickup for them.
Is Justin Cooper going to be better? And what does that look like? 1 podium last year, 2nd place at Salt Lake City.
I think the pace was great last year. I think we saw a lot of rounds where, great starts just couldn't quite hang with that head group that long. I think most of the improvement just needs to be staying power. We saw it early in outdoors again. The speed is there. The starts are there. Just the staying power needs to be there. And I do think that's a little easier to find than starts and speed. So yes, I would think he would be better. And I think that being better is just being able to hang in there, basically.
Well, what Justin wants to work on or implement for 2025 is he believes, and I think this is obvious, that he very much operates within his comfort zone. He won't risk getting tired, almost like a fear of vulnerability or a fear of being exposed. So he'll very much stay within his comfort zone and finish a main event and be not the slightest bit fatigued. For 2025, he wants to make a conscious effort to push himself beyond his limit to hopefully, and this is a risk versus reward situation, hopefully push himself up in the results. Of course, the potential downside to this is he pushes himself beyond his comfort zone, mistakes come from that, then he loses his consistency and he has no results to show for it. The positive is maybe he becomes a consistent podium threat and elevates himself to the top of this B group. Time will tell. Without doubt... Sorry, go on.
It kind of reminds me of a conversation me and you had about Ryder DiFrancesco. You said kind of the same thing. Like, there's that risk of, hey, you can stay in your comfort zone, continue to just not blow up and chill, versus, at some point you have to extend yourself and try to find that level, but you are putting risk out there of, potentially just imploding from wearing yourself out, making mistakes, losing that consistency, but you got to take that next step eventually.
So, there is so little Ken Roczen discussion. This is without doubt the most underrated or underappreciated he's been entering a new season. Is that justified? Is he nearing the end of his career and he's not going to make the same impact that he did last year, the year before? Or are we set up for another Ken Roczen surprise? Worth noting, in his 450 career, he has made the podium at least once in the first 3 rounds every single year. So, does that happen again?
I think so. I think even I was thinking about this when we talk about everybody elevating. I don't know if it's just like there seems to be more things against Kenny than and when I say more things he's up against than his competitors. He's up there in age, but yeah, he's not up there as much as an Eli or a Jason. However, he's getting also near the end of his career. I think some of it comes back to the continuous question marks of the injuries he faced back 2017, 2019 stuff, the health. He is on not trying to just go to the age old, the Suzuki's old, but yeah, it's like, okay, we talk about Jason, we talk about these guys getting new bikes, new equipment, new testing methods. He's still on a private team, a lack of factory support, an older platform, the injuries, the health. There's just so many things against Kenny. So when Kenny continues to push through all this, it reminds you how amazing he is, but it's also very easy to kind of put him to the wayside sometimes because you add all these things up and you're like, man, you just kind of start to doubt a little bit that he'll break through and continue to push forward. And I mean, Kenny's an amazing, amazing talent. He's had an amazing career. There's times I wonder, just like, are we getting close to the sunset for him?
Well, we are for a lot of riders. That's weirdly the state of play in 450 Supercross. Yeah. But does Roczen have a potential to be better than last year? Or are we kind of at a point where it's more about maintaining? I mean, and let's not forget, one win last year, but Nashville, he was riding phenomenally. There were Indianapolis, he gave Jett all he could handle in the Triple Crown. There were instances last year where he didn't win, but he was in the picture. So let's not forget that. I feel like easy to maybe lose sight of what he did last year. If he maintains that level, that could lead to multiple wins.
I feel like I have a tougher time answering any of this Kenny stuff because I'm just lost at what to say. Like, again, talent level wise, just a generational guy. Like, yes, on paper, knowing what he's capable of, yes, he can continue to grow and excel. But again, then I look at the things he's up against, and I kind of question, like, can he continue to grow? I don't know. I can't doubt it and say no, but I can't enthusiastically stand here and say Kenny's going to, just storm to the front and continue to grow all the way around, speed, fitness-wise, ability, all these things.
Well, talking of growing, a lot of people expect Hunter Lawrence to take a massive step up in 2025 Supercross, and I genuinely have a hard time with this because, yes, Hunter was incredible outdoors, and yes, Hunter was incredible in SMX. Without doubt, that is not even up for debate. But he had 2 podiums from memory in Supercross, and I don't necessarily believe that the outdoor and SMX progress automatically translates to Supercross. Yes, of course he will be better. He will have a lot more podiums, probably in the 7, 8, 9 range. But a lot of people are considering that a main event win is a given, and even placing him in title contention. I've seen countless people, even people I respect, place Hunter right there with Chase, Eli, and Cooper as Jett's competitors. And I have a hard time seeing that outdoor and SMX step translating to Supercross. 2026, I believe we'll be there. But I could see Hunter going down as a disappointment in the eyes of many this year because his rate of progression will not be quite as aggressive.
I agree with that. I say this a lot of pods we do. I think, there's certain steps that have to be made before that conversation. Yeah, somebody like his brother are guys that sometimes surpass that in double step in a sense, but it still feels like there's an in-between area that he needs to meet. Again, needs to win a main event. So in the conversation of why we don't even have him in the title contention, yeah, I can't sit here and back it. Because again, I feel like there's still steps that need to be taken. And I think it's a disservice a little bit to just be like, yeah, no, he's going to be right there with his brother and Eli and Cooper and Chase. Does he want to be? Of course, absolutely. But to sit there and use that as the benchmark, so anything below that is considered a failure, is ridiculous. Hunter will continue to grow and build as a racer. He has time. It's fine. He definitely has, goals or check marks, milestones that he needs to accomplish this year to be in that title contention conversation for 26 or 27. But again, we'll get there. Get there when it's time.
One thing is clear, Hunter will benefit, as will Jett, from the incredible power that is delivered through their Yoshimura system. Hunter, Jett, and now us, supported by Yoshimura for 2025. Very exciting for the trio that we are. Justin Barcia. How much progress do we see from Justin Barcia? Let's not forget, terrible Supercross season last year. Really struggled with a bike, but final 4 rounds, it came around. He was in the top 6, 4 rounds in a row, which was quite the improvement from where he started. 1 podium last year. I think it's obvious that he will be better simply because last year was just so terrible. But I have a hard time quantifying what that looks like because I do believe that he will benefit from the Baker's factory. I do believe that he will benefit from being a more in-house team. He's less off to the side now, as you can read in a story on Vital MX, which will probably be up by now. So I do think he's going to be better. Does that mean he'll win a race? I don't know, but that's what's tough because we talk about how many winners in a season. Yes, you have the big 4. Roczen, Anderson, Hunter, Barcia, AP are 5 riders who, without doubt, will be expecting to win a main event. And if they don't, they will be pissed. But there's no way we have 9 winners. There's just not. And I'm not even including Mookie in that list or Prado. So I don't know. I don't know what 2025 looks like for Barcia, but I'm confident that it looks better than 2024 did.
I agree with you because, 2024, I think, barely chips above his, 2017 JGR was the really... The black eye of his career, the first year on the Suzuki's there for JGR. It wasn't that much better than that. Yeah, it's easy to see how it will be better. Especially, not to bash on stuff that was outgoing, but TLD program before, was it a factory program? Yes, in a sense, but even the people I know that were there and carried on are like, yeah, the disconnect was larger than we realized. Basically, to put it bluntly, Barcia is now a Rockstar Husky rider, but on a red bike. Half the team is shared between the 2 outfits right now. And thanks to the efforts of, I would say, primarily RJ, how hard he has pushed the last couple of years, him and Ramsey, to even close the gap from Husky to KTM. That is still something that's very different from Europe to the US, is that little bit of hierarchy. So I think from Barcia talked about how much progress he made at the end of last season when he finally got 2 days of testing with the KTM staff. Everybody knows at one point he tried Chase's setup, but he just got handed a kind of test and was like, no, this doesn't actually work for me. And they just chased all kinds of stuff. And then finally he got, the proper guidance and help and support from the factory side. And they did a day and a half of testing, and he was dramatically better at the end of Supercross after that test. And he has that level of resource now. So yes, I would think bike-wise, much better. Program-wise, he knows exactly where the targets, lie between Chase and AP and all these guys he's with every day right now. But same as you, okay, yeah, it's gonna be better, but it sucks. I could sit here and see him run 7th to 5th at A1 and be like, that's definitely a lot better than last year. But I know some people are gonna be like, oh well, all this talk about him being better, and he won A1 for a couple of years in a row.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Going to be one where it's very easy that people are going to look at this and paint it negatively when it actually could be a huge positive.
And I actually recall having this conversation last year where we all need to adjust our expectations on what's good for all of these riders. Because as the field gets deeper and stronger and more contenders arise, the parameters are redefined for everyone. And even the riders have to come to terms with that themselves. Whereas a 5th place would have been a disaster for, say, Ricky, James, or Chad in their championship winning years, on some nights, a 5th place for Jett, Cooper, Chase, or Eli will be just fine and actually quite acceptable. In that way, the sport has certainly changed, and it's something that we all need to get accustomed to. Malcolm Stewart. Now, it will be better than last year in the same breath as Barcia. Last year was not good. Starts, speed, all of it. Just not the Malcolm Stewart that we know and love. Does he get that long overdue win? I don't believe so. Does he return to the podium? Yes. He gets at least 1 podium. I'm confident of that.
I agree. I think we see a return to the podium. If he were to get the long-awaited win, again, with the field we're talking about, hats off to him. What an excellent way to... I hate to say we're talking about all these guys at the end of their career, and I'm going to throw one at you. Do you feel like of the conversation guys we have that are on their way looking out, like Malcolm has to be the closest to on his way looking out in terms of ride, like with RJ looming, I don't know, budgets at that group. Like, is this? I feel like this is potentially Malcolm's last chance. I don't. I feel like he is the most likely of the conversation group to potentially get pushed out of his spot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that without doubt. I don't even believe that's a conversation, simply because if Anderson maintains, and Mookie maintains, and Roczen maintains, Malcolm is still at the bottom of that list.
Yeah. Malcolm's the one that gets booted from being maintained. Like Anderson, he seems like it would be the hardest for him to secure staying.
Yes. Also worth noting, so starts are certainly the issue with Malcolm. That's without doubt. If you look at his starts from last year, he started in the top 10, and this includes Triple Crown main events. So that's 23 starts. He started in the top 10 7 times. And he has not started in the top 3 since round 11 of 2022, again including Triple Crown. So he needs a start. That will change what Malcolm Stewart is capable of. If he continues to start as he has done for the last couple of years, he will continue to flounder outside of the top 5. If he can somehow find a way to start top 5 semi-consistently, that's a game changer. We start to see the Malcolm of 2022, where he was a consistent top 5 podium threat. That's what I will be watching for Malcolm, and as you can say this for everyone, but that is the key to his success.
I'm waiting for, as these pro motocross teams grow in terms of staffing with data specialists and chassis specialists, I'm waiting for teams to develop a position for first turn specialist. Somebody who literally just spends their whole time on the team trying to figure out how to get the riders to get a start.
Well, Chase and AP both say that they are much more confident in their KTMs off of the gate heading into 2025 based on rigorous testing that's been done. Make no mistake about it, both Chase and AP have thrown the kitchen sink at starts since Vegas. That would translate to Malcolm and Barcia, so in this case, a rising tide will truly lift all Austrian ships. So if Chase can get better starts, that should trickle down to Malcolm. So it really is going to be make or break for the group as a collective. But if Malcolm does win, of course, that will be the most popular win worldwide. Aaron Plessinger. This is difficult because even for him to maintain would be quite a challenge and quite an achievement, because he was very, 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 very good last year and significantly improved. Is he going to improve again? I think that's a tall order, because to improve again from there would be consistent winner. But I think he'll be similar. Do I think he wins the main event? No. But do I think he podiums 4, 5, 6 times? Sure. Do I think that Hunter and maybe Anderson surpass him? Yes. And that's where I'm at with Plessinger.
Ooh. You see the Hunter one. I don't agree on the Anderson one.
Well, as we've dissected, I'm high on Anderson.
I noticed. Plessinger is another one. I feel he's in such a weird place in his career. I do agree. Like, there's one level of like he's done an amazing job as the second seat gunner at KTM, and they've continued to just re-up him on 1-year deals. He's a little later in his career than, again, like your Justin Cooper conversation. He's in a weird spot because naturally. He's a weird one. Even if he could outperform his ability from last year, what happens to him? If Chase ends up staying and if Tom wins the title and moves up, I don't know if I see them going 3-man. I think that's why he's continued to be 1-year re-up. Like, it's so weird is, of the people we're having this if Anderson levels up, he very likely stays at Kawasaki.
Yeah.
If Roczen, like some of these guys we talked, if they maintain their level up, they stay put. Aaron could be the only guy in his group that could level up and actually still not end up, at his original home. There's other ways they can move him around the Austrian group, but there's so many question marks. Again, on the financial side there, we got to wait to see what happens with brands. But I feel for Aaron there that, he could potentially be better than last year and still be like, what happens to me? That uncertainty cannot be fun.
Yeah, but I do believe that rings true for everyone, because to what you just said, I think Anderson could kill it this year. And if Levi Kitchen demands a 450 ride, I think Kawasaki have to bet on the stars of the future.
Yeah, but Levi wins the title, they'll push him to defend. Like, at least Anderson could get one more year or something. Like I said, I mean, Aaron's really under the gun with if Tom wins the title again, he's out of the class.
Yeah. I think Kitchen will be pushing for a 450 ride more than expected. I think that's really going to be Anderson's only sticking point. Of course, also at Kawasaki is Fox Racing's Jorge Prado, which is very bizarre to say. To be number one, you must first become one with your body, bike and gear. Since 1974, Fox Racing's drive has always been to equip the field with the fastest and most innovative raceware on the planet. From Groms to pros, podiums to pits, and everywhere dirt meets two wheels, become one with the new MX-25 raceware collection. It's quite bizarre to me, and understandable because Prado has had a lot of setbacks this off-season, so it stems from that, of course. But dare I say, the Prado hype, intrigue, excitement, interest, all of that is about as low as it can possibly be. Is anyone excited? Because I feel like that's gone.
Yeah, it's definitely faded more than I thought it would. You know, I think, I don't know. Do you think any of it? Not to say that he didn't perform excellent at the Supercrosses he did last year. I felt like the hype of him racing the rounds last year was insane because, I mean, I get it. You know, MXGP versus AMA hype. There were people legitimately thought he could podium 450 Supercross races right off the cuff. He did great last year. You know, with more time on Supercross. However, like I said, there were setbacks, a team change, an OEM change frame, all this stuff. Is the hype just off? Because again, the conversation is about the four we started with, and it's, you know, I think it's fair to say with Jorge, like, and we talked about some of these guys that are kind of under the gun. Jorge's got I believe it's a 3-year deal plus one with Cadillac. He's got such a long-term commitment with those guys. They truly believe him in the future. They're truly investing in him. He's invested in himself, to, you know, to pull the plug from GPs and come here. It's going to be a tough one. I feel like there's easily going to be some people disappointed with his first full year here, but I mean, you learned it, Lewis, coming here, like, okay, I get it. GPs are traveling all over the world, but the difference in the way the weekends are laid out, he's going to go race 31 weekends here. We have a very unusual schedule. He's decided to be a California guy, which I do think is smart for at least the first year. The team is based here. Again, thinking very, very long-term, grow that relationship, learn that team inside and out. We get into the deeper East races, the flights, the travel, coming from west to east every single weekend. Like, there's going to be a lot weighing on him. I feel like people are going to be disappointed by, again, what could be a very solid full pull rookie season in the U.S.
Well, tell me this: does he get one podium? It's unrealistic to discuss anything beyond that, in my opinion, for year one. So does he get one podium?
I want to say yes, but this is where I come back to the disappointment. I can't believe I'm saying this, but like, it wouldn't shock me if it didn't happen. Am I insane to say that? And I'm not saying that.
I would say it only happens if the correct situation arises, which would effectively be a mud race or a first-turn pile-up similar to Daytona 2009. You know, I would say something kind of weird and unique has to happen for a podium in year one. Now, if he doesn't podium, in no way am I disappointed or criticizing, because in this field, I think that is a tall order. If Prado doesn't get a single top 6, then I'm criticizing. That is the realistic bar that by the end of the year, I would like to see him in 5th, 6th, 7th.
Yeah, I'd like to see him 4th through 7th consistently by the mid to later point of the season, battling, you know, getting good starts and battling inside the podium. I'm completely okay with him not getting a podium in the first year. It's no red flag, no sirens. This, again, long-term game. And I think in Moto, particularly fan base and riders, very much struggle with long-term play. He is so young. He is making one of the most insane transitions. Again, who else have we seen win a world title and come over here? Greg Albertine and Tortelli?
You're talking Premier class, of course.
Yeah, to go Premier, because you have to go straight to Premier instead of being able to do 250 season. Again, if you look at all the things weighing against him, is Prado the level of talent that could win a Supercross title down the road? 100%. He has that level of rider and talent and ability. I think it cannot be understated, and it's not excuses. The amount of things weighing up against him in his first season. If the man podiums even one race in Supercross, if he somehow podiumed like 3 or 4, I would be mind blown. I would call that the most massive success for everything that he's up against.
Yeah, it's again relevant to everyone. It's going to be difficult to judge because, and especially in Prado's situation, he has such a pedigree, such an incredible career up until this point. It will be peculiar to see him in 9th and be like, good job, that's a great ride. But that is going to be the new reality that he will also have to come to terms with personally, and we will as well.
Let me ask you this. From the time you've dealt with him in GPs and his personality, do you think that'll be a challenge for him accepting that long-term play? I think he knows it, making the move, but it's very different to when it's in the distance going, yeah, I'm making the move here. It's going to be, I'm going to have to learn the ropes, figure everything out, etc. But then when you are, again, Jorge Prado, the 4-time world champion, 2-time MX2, 2-time MXGP, who is expects himself to win. If you're getting 9ths and us as media, like I come up to him on the first races of the season, he gets a 9th, and I tell him, congratulations, that was an amazing ride, and the team's patting him on the back. Do you think he's going to be in his head going like, why are people happy I got 9th?
Knowing Prado, he says the right stuff, so that will be fine. But I know that he always expects more of himself than he portrays. So we will never know, but I guarantee inside of him he will have loftier expectations, but you will never know that because he will say the correct stuff. Anyone else you want to touch on?
It's interesting as I thought coming into this year's preview show, one person who we were talking about as kind of like, again, somebody who's in a very weird spot of their career, but I mean, he ended up getting a 2-year deal, so it's a little bit of a lifeline, is Craig. What ends up happening with Christian? Like, what are our expectations actually of Christian's current situation?
Well, of course, we don't know if he's going to race A1. Even if he does, he will be miles behind the 8 ball, and it will be very difficult for a period, and you can't judge to begin with. I do believe that he will definitely be better once he gets to a level of comfort. To a degree, I have uncertainty about how much emphasis is on his riding in his star deal, and I think that even he won't have the answers to that until we go racing, and Hayden starts asking questions, and he needs to be here, he needs to be there. That is going to be a lesson to all. I certainly do not believe that his racing is a priority in that camp on Team Deegan, and I think that will even harm his prep and the amount of time it takes him to get to his best level. But I truly hope he gets to his best level, because Craig is a great talent, a great person to have around, really interesting, intriguing storyline to watch here as well. So on a personal note, I really hope that we see an elevated performance, because there'll be so much to unpick with that. It will be really quite fascinating.
Another oddball one, level of what you would consider a successful season versus not, Dylan Ferrandis.
He just needs to do what he did last year, which is ride between 5th and 10th consistently, and that's just fine. A podium, I believe, is too long a shot at this point.
Someone of Colt Nichols' stature, are we kind of winding, I hate to say the words, winding the drain a little bit, jumping through teams, everything? Like, is there much of a way to Colt to get back in more of the spotlight he was his first 450 year with HRC? Is it possible, or are we seeing, Colt's going to settle into a certain place in his career?
Well, first race with HRC, he did 4th, 5th, one of those, 6th maybe. If he does that, then immediately the sky's the limit and interest peaks. Doing that will be tough. It came from a start at A1 that year. So again, start, maybe he does it again. He is, of course, coming in behind the 8 ball as well because of a shoulder injury in Perth for WSX. So don't judge him immediately. But this field is so stacked that, of course, Colt has not gotten a lot of attention, which sets him up perfectly to surprise everyone. So I do believe he will surprise simply because expectations are non-existent because he's not being talked about.
Savacci's pace at World SX, again, when it's you're able to start with the guys, run with the guys. You know, there's a question mark of, okay, Joey could at times be, you know, closer to Kenny and Eli than maybe people would ever expect him to actually be on a 450. Can Joey impress and again also kind of change trajectory on his career a little bit, finally making the move to the 450s full time? What do we say?
I believe that Joey may be my
dark horse.
Yeah, or surprise, or however you want to put that. Like, there is, like, Joey, in my mind, will beat Ferrandis. He's better than Ferrandis. I don't know if that's an impressive position to be in, but that's where I'm at.
I think, again, the field we're talking about, and people have to keep perspective of who's racing who, but to me, I'm not going to be shocked if Joey comes out in top 10's A1.
No, I would almost expect...
Not shocked, and I also think at some point in the season he will be inside the top 5, and I think that's massively respectable. I don't know if people expect that of him, or if people are still, if it's... Do you think Savatgy will be less or more quiet than Justin Cooper in terms of people even talking about the results and his on track and the TV and just like the notoriety he will get for doing his job? Will it be more or less than Justin Cooper?
Well, of course, if Cooper gets on a podium, then that will boost his attention. But if he doesn't, I believe there is more fanfare around Savatgy. Cooper, I don't know what... Cooper has an identity crisis within the sport. And if I was his management, I would be seriously concerned because it feels as though Cooper must do so much more than his peers to be recognised. And I don't know why that is, but it's a fundamental problem, and it will prove to be a problem. Well, put it this way, I would argue that with what he's done so far, he should have a multi-year deal somewhere, or at least a 2-year deal. And I feel like part of that is just, part of the reason he struggles for that is just simply because he's almost, as bad as it is to say, forgettable. But wrapping this up, so Jett is who we are both picking for the championship because that is the safe bet, and there's not really much point discussing that. Biggest surprise?
I actually, like I said, I kind of used it already when I said dark horse. Like, I actually think Joey is going to be the biggest surprise. That's taking like a big step. That's, of course, very easy to say because he will be such a dark horse. Inside the more name group, biggest surprise.
Dare I say, and I don't know if this will be accepted, I say Chase because I believe that we will see some form of his 2023 speed and potential, and I believe we've moved on so quickly that will surprise people, and people will think it's brand new when actually we saw it just a year and a half ago.
That's a tough one because you can't say of anybody else in the group having, like, if Eli came out and figured out how to outrun those guys on raw pace at a couple rounds, like, that's not going to shock people. Eli's,
no, but Chase is generally underappreciated, so I feel like there will be people like, wow, who would have thought? And it's like, well, no, that's always been there.
Maybe big surprise to another conversation we had, though, is that just perception around Jorge. I just think the actual conversations around him, I am very interested to see how our colleagues in media portray his season. I'm curious to see how TV broadcast portrays this season. I'm curious to see how team and sponsors, everybody. I'm just very, very curious to see, how people portray his season in general.
Biggest disappointment? It's a matter of perspective, but I say Hunter simply because expectations are so high from some people that it's simply impossible for him to meet, and wrongfully, he will be tarred with this disappointing brush because of that. Not personally, because my expectations, I feel, are quite modest, but I think some people are maybe getting ahead of themselves.
I agree with you. As we had on that discussion point, I very much agree with you there. I'm going to double back on the one I keep going. I think Prado, biggest disappointment, just because people will expect too much when he will be doing very, very well for his circumstance. People will expect too much, and people might label it a disappointment.
Yeah, and I think that's unfortunate. But there you have it. The 2025 Monster Energy AMA Supercross preview show presented by Fox Racing, Decal Works, and Yoshimura. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you to those brands for their continued support as we enter a new year, a new season, and one that once again promises to be the greatest of all time. Will it deliver? We will get a hint of that in just a couple of days, and of course you will be able to stay tuned to all that happens across Vital MX's various platforms, so please do that. Even from the moment that you listen to this, a lot of preview content and different perspectives coming across all channels. Thank you once again for your support and for listening, and we will see you at Angel Stadium real soon.